Welcome, everyone, to the Contact Center Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. Today, you are in for a very, very special treat because we have two experts on that are here to do a job that we have never done before, which is we're talking about the most important, absolutely most important challenges that we all face as B2B C-suite executives to grow our businesses, right? That inform our entire go-to-market strategy. And there is a report called the Challenge Report, and over 45 different B2B C-suite executives were asked this one question: what are the two greatest challenges to creating long-term sustainable growth as B2B executives? And we've taken all those together and we've come up with the top three challenges that we all face in growing our businesses. And today we have on Efrat Ravid and Lina Tonk to help us decipher, what does all that mean? What do we have to do as a result of that? We all know that the traditional playbooks don't work anymore, that things just change constantly, and we need to keep up with that. And so that's the crux of the conversation that we're going to have here today. And Efrat, you are a 3-time B2B CMO. You work with Goldman Sachs as a value accelerator advisor. You're a board member. You've worked with just a number of Fortune 500 companies. We're honored to have you on and with us here today. And Lina, you have an incredible background, not only as a CMO, but you've been a chief experience officer as well. And today that carries heavy, heavy weight. I think it was McKinsey that came out with a study in 2023 that said amongst 400 highly profitable companies that they did in this study, that CX was the number one differentiator today, right? So that's going to play a big role in what we're talking about. But what I'd love to do is give you each a chance to give a little bit more about your background before we get started. And Efrat, if you don't mind, I'm going to
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure to be here with you, Steve, again, and with Lina. I'm so excited. A little background. I am a software engineer in my background. I started my career in a very technical field engineering in Asia Pacific, robotics, all ERP, bill of material, all the very tough and heavy. And over time, I moved to the US, started in Boston. Now I ended up in San Diego. I felt like I found it after working in different functioning big organizations like the SOS system, which is a big software in Europe, through small startups and acquired Quality Metric about 7 years ago. We were less than 20 million. Now we are well above 100 million. And I love this journey. I think I love the growth. Well, I have government tax portfolio companies also grow fast. I have an ambivalent relationship with playbooks in general.
Well, good. Lina, I'd love to hear more about your background.
Yeah. So thank you for having me. And Efrat and I think the listeners will probably hear a lot of similarities. We both actually come from very different backgrounds. My background has always been on PE, very marketing driven, but early years, some of sales experience, which I think gave me the view of being dynamic and pivoting and having to change, not being so salesy maybe, is what gave me that background. But I've always had a lot of passion on experience. So being experience officer for a period of time was only what many would say was just matter of time. So 2-time CMO. I'm currently at Recurly, one of the coolest subscription brands right now in the market. We've had absolutely incredible growth in the last year and a half, and it's been really fun to be part of it. But what has been really fun of the growth is just that reminder that the playbook doesn't sit. The playbook, kind of like what Efrat said, it's not something that you write and close down and that's what you're going to do. The world's changing. People are changing. We have new generations coming through, which changes absolutely everything, the way buyers want to buy. So I'm very, very passionate about making that connection on what's really translates into value at the end of all of it. I have a hard time talking about people as buyers. I have a really hard time talking about them as buyers. I always want to think of them as people that are getting some value from what we're able to provide them. I think what's fascinating right now is because that playbook needs to constantly change. there's also a very old school mentality of intimacy with customers and how we cannot lose the relationship aspect of how we communicate with our customers and the actual people that we're providing value to. So I'm fascinated by all of that, and I'm excited for this discussion mostly because of that, because there's just so much that we can do on the trust side, but there's so much that technology can actually advance us into in the future. But I'm with Efrat. Don't use the same playbook. It's not going to work. It won't work tomorrow.
Well, I'm going to take a cue from what you just said, that you're so excited to talk about the trust side, right? So the title of the episode that we have here is The Ultimate Trust Builder, why the story is not about you. And oh my goodness, the story that we're going to tell about that is going to be amazing. But let me backtrack just a little bit, and I'm going to talk about this challenge report and the top 3 challenges that came out of it. So the number one challenge to me was just really mind-blowing, is that internal alignment was viewed by C-suite executives. We're talking CEOs, CMOs, CROs, chief growth officers, chief experience officers. It was looked as the number one challenge to growing our business. Yet we usually look externally, right? It's the market, it's the competition, what they're doing that's keeping us back. We got to compete, we got to get out there, right? But over 70% of the responses were internal challenges, and alignment was right on the top of that. So that was challenge number 1. Challenge number 2 was that we don't have a good enough handle on the voice of our customer, and that we don't have dedicated programs to that we rely on existing business processes to talk to our customers, and we develop a great familiarity with our customers. We talk about them all the time, right? But we don't really have a true deep understanding of our customers. That was the second challenge. The third challenge was the balance between short-term and long-term. Because we all know, we go talk to the rest of the C-suite or board meetings, nobody's asking us about our long-term brand building efforts and trust building efforts. They're talking about our quota this quarter, next quarter, what are we doing? The conversation starts short-term, and there is a pull, because we know that today's brand is tomorrow's demand, right? We know that we have to work on both. So that imbalance was the third challenge. But what you each arrived on was the true hidden number one challenge. This is what Forrester actually called the number one challenge facing B2B companies. And it was a trust epidemic that we're in today. And I'm going to stop talking just a minute and let you guys talk on this. But to really paint the picture around how bad the trust epidemic is, we all know about Edelman and LinkedIn's trust barometer, right? In the most recent barometer, it showed the continuation of decades in Europe, in the United States, all over the world, decades of decline in trust, to the point where amongst 32,000 respondents, over 60% said that they think we as the selling organizations are being intentionally misleading. Intentionally misleading. Ow, right?
Ouch.
Oh my goodness. Our brands are trust marks. If we don't have trust, what do we have, right? Another study showed that the value that we provide our clients, how we demonstrate that, 74% said we don't buy it. We don't believe it. Right? So there's definitely an issue when we talk about playbooks. One of the things that Forrester said was, we have dedicated programs for lead development, right? Lead generation and sales enablement, but we very rarely have trust building campaigns and programs. We just don't think about it that way. So Lina, I'm going to ask you first to jump in here and just comment, if you could, this trust crisis, why traditional approaches don't fail when we have this kind of a trust crisis that we're facing.
Yeah, that's a big number, right? Over 60%. I think even 30% will be high. To see it over 60% is quite scary. And that's when you actually have to come together as a brand and really review if your brand is measuring to that point, to a 60%, where a buyer, here I am saying buyer, but a future customer is actually feeling that you're misleading them, then we have a big problem. That's when trust really comes through. Here, through my time, I think at Experience Officer, that was probably where my lights got open really big. This is when AI was starting to make a turn. It was starting to make an impact. I am all about AI. I'm all about the ability that it has to make us productive, to advance the work we're doing, even in some levels, the sentiment. What we're not going to be able to advance with AI is what we hear from our customers. And AI has a lot of different ways to actually listen to customers today. But I think the biggest problem that we have when we face trust issues is we're not sitting next to a customer. We're not talking to a customer. We are building brand and campaigns and selling points on the future of growth of the company, but we're not being real about what the value that it's really providing, that is the customer. So to me, the number one way to go almost attack this is to just go get intimate with your customers. Actually, when we had our first call with 3 of us, I was just sharing with the 2 of you that I had just come back from a New York City event. And I just last week came out from a lunch and learn from some of our customers. And all we were doing was listening to our customers, what they're going through, what they're facing. There was no agenda for us to go push things to them, their energy, their sentiment, where they're going, where they need us to go from them. And by default, the amount of trust that builds into what will happen next is absolutely incredible. Now, if I go and have one of those meetings, for example, to be tactical, and then I come out of it and nothing changes, you don't pivot, you don't think like your brand has to maybe change a little bit, the way we talk has to change because we're hearing this and they're going through this, then we're doing nothing. Right? I'm just listening and maybe I'm just going to go change my selling points, which many do. That does nothing. It goes back into the trust bucket. They eventually feel like we're misleading them because then sales is simply going to go try to make their quota. So I think what I would say overall about trust is that you do have a way of gaining that trust by being really close to customers and listening to them and understanding where they're going, what they're doing, what they're going through. And even though we have a bunch of AI capabilities to extract a lot of that for us, which we do, and it helps us a bunch when we can't be with them in person. But I think the two have to come together. I think you have to be close to your customers. Your customers have to know you. They have to know that there's a face behind who's talking to them. That person means something good for them. So I see it as a double approach. It's a traditional approach because traditional is being in person with people. So that we today call it traditional, which is crazy. And then very future approach too. Give room for AI, give room for those AI capabilities, but don't let them take over those sentiments and those feelings that you might not be able to translate fully when you're in person with the customer. That's how I'm leaving it there day to day right now.
So one of my biggest takeaways from what you're saying here is there is nothing to replace building trust in a relationship, and we're all in a relationship-based business. You cannot replace, even in the day of AI, and the promise is still evolving on what it's going to do with this. We cannot replace the one-on-one conversation and learning. And if we do, we're going to fall behind. Fantastic. Efrat, so I'd love to have you come in and weigh in on this. So please.
Yeah, so first I completely agree. Building relationship, going back to the basic of human being relationship is absolutely what builds trust. But I have to admit, when I saw 60%, I thought that next year it will be 80 and 90% of people or companies don't trust others. And the reason for that is actually the AI devolution. Anything we see right now, including this podcast, can be mimicked by AI in seconds, right? I mean, there are so many stories. Beginning of the year, Elon Musk announced he was running to president in France. Do you remember this story? Like every French publication had him say in French, liberté, like in real accent. Apparently, it was a project of student in Montreal that actually did it, and it was in every French media. And it looks like Elon Musk. And there's so many examples like that. Wow. Our CEO, you can see a video of anyone, any of us, my kids do my thing in 1 second, right? And it's easy and it's irrelevant and you don't know what to trust when you see. So how can I trust my agenda? How can I trust what they say? And when we look at marketing specifically, we all sound the same. It's really hard. And this is why I completely agree with Lina that it's in the end of the day, the relationship you have with your customers. It's not when you say that your product works and when you bring your customers together with your prospect or customers together and they talk and they sell, and then you take what you learn and actually implement it. So it's basic. It's listening, acting to them, and acknowledging the fact, in my opinion, that you cannot trust anything that you see, you hear. It's like so hard. In my opinion, the big challenge of AI, it's actually not the jobs that are changing. And we need to learn as human beings to add new value to the world, that it's not like to the old one, right? The old function we're all going to be replaced, or we need to find a new way to add value. The issue is that what can I trust? And this is why I think no one trusts market deals anyway. You remember the book, All Market Deals Are Liars, right? Like that was before AI. Like, how can I trust my marketing function? Again, it's back to basic, back to relationship. And if you are selling to enterprise like us, it's easier. But what happened when you are selling to SMBs? How you build that trust? I think that's the biggest question that I have. Or when you sell to consumer, how you build this trust? I mean, it's a lot of work that you need to do.
You know, it puts a whole new angle on, Lina, what you were saying is the importance of the one-on-one conversation. Because maybe in the future, I'll have a conversation like this with Efrat AI. I won't know if I'm talking to Efrat or not. But right now, at least the conversation, that's real. And you can't replace that with AI. The idea here that you're talking about, all of you, is we have to have a plan to address trust. And one of the best ways that we can do that is not through mass media, mass outreach. It is through one-on-one conversations. It's the reason why hyper-personalization is such a big, topic these days, because it's about the one-on-one relationship in B2B, right? That's what it's really about. Why would we throw out the one-on-one conversation during that, right? Here's what I thought was really interesting. You guys opened up my eyes to this in our last conversation. Is you said, Steve, internal alignment, it's one of the biggest challenges, right, that came out of the report, but it's also the foundation for building external trust. And Efrat, I'd love for you to take the lead on talking about what is it about internal alignment that is so important to build that foundation for trust?
Absolutely. I want to look at alignment in general in 3 ways. The internal alignment is so critical in general for success because you need one unit way for your organization to go to one direction. It doesn't matter if your organization is 10, 20, 500, or 50,000 people, right? If you take this power to go to the same direction, the power is much bigger. That's one. It's simple, right? Well, how you divide the energy, that's one. The second thing is that when you have alignment and you have one story and not different type of story per executive, per teams, with the team to the customer is much more clear. It's like parents, right? And they tell you different stories or different messages. But if you have one message and you can tell that this is the way the family and the work growing, it's still for the kids to understand what is the expectation and what they need to do. Same with customer. If we have one message and one way to see through and very clear point of view, I mean, a company needs to have point of view. A strong company or successful company have a very clear point of view that they share with the customers. And the same thing between us It's all about, we want our employees to be happy, right? We want our employees to wake up in the morning and say, oh my God, it's the best thing that happened to me. I love it here. When they are happy, customers are happy, everyone is happy. It's very difficult to be happy in an environment. There is misalignment between, they don't know what to do, their KPI is not clear, success is not clear. Why you wake up in the morning, what's the mission and vision of the company is not clear. And then it's all breaking up. I know I said three things. So it's clarity of our customer, what's the message for them. It's a one message, it's a one energy. I live with energy, so you will hear me talking a lot about energy. It's so much more efficient.
We all have known that in many times in our careers, right? Marketing says one thing, sales says another thing, and then customer success says, what did sales say to you? And now I've got to deliver on that, right? It's like you're talking to three different companies, right? Just at the very essence that it hit me. I'm like, oh my goodness. We all know that misalignment is a huge problem, not only just strategically in where we're going, but what we communicate and how we communicate it from the employee to the customer. I love that. Lina, what do you have to say?
So many points in here, but I think the one that I would absolutely make is C-level alignment. It is incredibly powerful for the culture of a company. I think in the older days, people would say, well, every C-level is coming in to run their function and do their thing. And I think that doesn't work. That alone creates misalignment. I think having a C-level that's actually very intimate, like we are with customers, meaning they have to be in person, they have to get to know each other, they know a lot about each other, constantly talk about the things that they're hearing, what they're experiencing, the cadence on how they hear these things. That's one. I think C-level energy empowerment goes all the way through the organization and builds up that culture of kind of like what you said, Efrat, like waking up and knowing that this is a place I want to be. I know where I'm going and I understand what we're doing. There's one point I'll make here because it's surprising to me. We were just talking with our CEO in one of our sessions about this. The past research shows that for people to remember something that you've told them, you have to repeat it to them about 8 different times for them to remember it. And then recent research now shows that you actually have to do it 22 times. 22. And where I'm going with this is here we make a very big point of repeating and having the same story as a C-level group for our teams so that there's alignment into where we're going, what our goals are, how we want to speak to a customer. That's one point that I would make. But I think the second point that I think is very, very important when you said sales, customer success, and marketing, the way I see the three functions, and I always try to make it the commercial function. It doesn't matter who's running what. If you are tightly closed, those 3 executives are tightly closed, those teams will be tightly closed and it becomes a commercial function. It doesn't become, well, marketing's running that. Let them do that while we sales run enablement and go talk completely different to the customer. And then success is just actually talking about something different. So I've gone as far as saying the words we use matter, the sentiment and the energy that we use with customer resonates on alignment. And I also think it impacts trust at the same time because they're hearing the same thing and they might be hearing it from a different person or a little bit different, but it's still the essence is the same. So I think alignment is critical.
When we say alignment, many times the team think that it means that we need to agree on everything. Of course, you have 3 executives in one room. The reasons they are executives is because they have strong opinion and they agree on everything. Executives disagree doesn't mean that they don't have alignment. So there is a vision and where we are growing and how we are growing it, and then we need to have an agreement and grow. But to see the process of disagreement, it's very healthy for the organization. I don't want the audience or even my team to think that they can agree on everything. It's actually not healthy to agree on everything or then don't grow, right? And they have new ideas, then it's growing. There is a big difference between fake it, which I'm completely against, or health disagreement, and alignment of the principle. And that's, I think, something that will distinguish team members. It's in their roles and their maturity. Like when you're starting your career, sometimes when you see executives disagree, it's like the end of the world. And when you get mature, you understand it's actually that.
So I want to have you add on to what you just said there, right? Because everything that we've just talked about here is how we tell a consistent story, create a consistent experience. But Efrat, you said something in our previous conversation where you said the story isn't about us. We have a tendency to talk about us, right? And product marketing can lead the way, right? But that is secondary. That is a distant second. What we do is a distant second to the story that's about them. If you could, and then Lina, you've got a really important story to tell about telling the story is not about us, but I'd love to, Efrat, what did you mean by that when you said the story is not about us?
Our job is to serve our customers. It's their story. And I notice their story is so much more interesting than the technology behind what we are showing. And the worst mistakes that marketeers in every level do is that they tell the product feature function or the value of the product or anything about the product. And who freaking care about the product? It's not about what's the problem of the customer and how it builds in the customer eyes. My favorite part of my job is in the customer advisory board is to listen to the customer, not only about how, for example, quantimetric makes their life better. It's nice, it's interesting, but I want to hear about their entire ecosystem. When I see in companies that I work with, their company in the middle and then everything around them, I know that there is a lot of work with this company. Companies that look at themselves as if they are in the middle and making a huge mistake. Take this chart that you try to expand your platform and put the customer in the middle, put your customer there, and then put out the platform. And your platform is one of them. The issue is that customers and consumers don't trust them because of everything we talk about, how they are trying to grow in this unstable environment. That's the story. It needs to make sure that they can keep their team working and not lay off. Many times we talk to companies, and especially now, they say, I need to lay off 10% of the company. How can I pay for your service? I said, okay, let's talk about how we keep your 10% of your value growth. Fantastic. But this is not about me selling you a platform. This is you growing, you hiring more people, you are successful. And that's when I meant it's a story out there. And we are one of the platform doesn't tell them. So yeah, very passionate about it.
Well, here's what I would love to do. The story is not about us is something that is so important. The example that you just gave, it's not about whether my platform and I survive. It's about the focus was on them and solving them, their challenge, right? We can't lose sight of that. And Lina, your company took this to what I would say the nth degree. I don't want you to name names or anything, but you have recently, as a company, brought on one of your dream clients that maybe was even thought to be out of reach at one point. But it was how you did that, which was so interesting. I would love for you to tell that story, please.
Yeah. So I'll tell that story and then I'll add a little bit more into kind of like how I view customer first, branding and storytelling. Before I tell that story, I think it starts with how we perceive our brand. So I think the last two companies I've done a full rebrand from the get-go because when I arrived to the brand, I realized that it was a brand all about the product. It was all about themselves. Even the tagline, the winning inspiration, everything was about the company itself, never about the customers we were to acquire. So I would say as a tactic, that will be something that any CMO should always be looking at and understanding, like, is our brand speaking to our customers or is our brand speaking to ourselves? Because that is the big mistake and a very common mistake. because the company itself feels powerful, because the employees understand it, right? Because I work in the product every day, so I understand it, so I feel connected with it. But guess what? Your customer absolutely doesn't feel connected to it at all. So I think brand plays a major part on being customer first. And then the second point I will make on the brand is let your customers speak for you. You don't have to be speaking for yourself all the time. We do this, we're amazing at this, our product is incredible, like all these things. I love what you said when you said their stories are so much more interesting. 100%. Because what we're solving for them is bigger than the use of the product that they're having. What we're solving for them is some type of growth opportunity. It's likely transforming. I mean, we see it in subscription probably a lot more than in other SaaS areas, but it's like, it's so exciting to hear how it transforms them. That's another point I'll make about that. So I'll be happy to tell you both. And since we spoke, we've had two more of those stories. And the way I would talk about them a little bit is brands that I think in the past for Recurly, I don't believe they were out of reach. I believe that our story and how we were connecting with the customers and what we actually did was actually not aligning. We've known that in the past, we will go and present to a prospect, and in most of these big prospects, you're flying in and you're going from the bottom up, and you don't know who's going to show up in the room. These are enterprise deals, and you're likely going to have 5, 6 people in the room, and 2 of them might be surprise guests, and they might be one of your decision makers. So there's a lot of planning that goes to it. So we tried this with one of our new bigger customers early in Q1. It was such a fun process. We call it a war room. I think we need to find a more positive, fun way to call it. But we got together as a commercial team, actually. We sat together and we started doing deep research into them, while others were doing deep research on if we presented to them, what was it going to do for them. So then both groups came together and we understood their mission into a whole other deeper level. Once we did that, we transformed that into the way we presented to them. The deck wasn't a Recurly deck. The deck was a deck that was all about them. The visuals on the deck were about them. The video, the motion, everything we presented. We knew we had to do big things for this type of deal. Even today, this customer actually was featured in our commercial kickoff, sharing that one of the moments they knew that we were the solution of choice for them had to do a lot with the team behind it. So think not necessarily the product. They knew a bunch of this product is the same, but our product was going to get them there. But a lot of the people involved, but that they will still always remember that first presentation when they presented, and we were far from anyone else that had presented, all about them, a deck that looked just about them. And then all of a sudden they were seeing themselves into this deck and the transformation that it was already going to happen for them. We closed the deal. We closed the deal very fast. And I'm happy to report that not only we would close it, being our largest deal in history as well, we were also able to implement them in a way that was absolutely incredible. So now they're talking about that too. They're saying just you were so connected with us from the beginning that you understood even what came next was so important to us. So I just think if we could make more time for understanding what their outcome needs to be, but if we can merge ourselves from a brand perspective into their brand, I think that's what they found most interesting, and we mirror today. And I'll be as practical as whoever's listening to share that actually we ended up having one level of design today that only works on prospect decks, because that's how impactful it has been for us. So it's a great story to have, we've been able to duplicate it as well. And it just shows that it's not about us. It's not about what we get out of it. It's about them.
We have also, especially from this year, the Princess Secret that is mentioning about telling the story is super important. We also learned that they're having very similar discussion here. They can save some money and look to internally and in the organization is great. The customer record, which is a game for them. And if there is anything we can mold the needle to look better to their customers, it's not even their story, it's their customer story. And improving that, that's for us was the winning story or the winning solution that we could. For a long time, we talk about how we can turn empowerment. Recently, with AI, a new feature of our wheel will actually succeed to help them. And that's the story that actually even crucial matter. It's almost like the customer customer flow.
Going back to trust, I just hear when you're not focusing on ourselves, we're focusing on them and their story, which is really how they impact their customers. That builds trust, right? Because they know that you're doing the right thing, you have the right focus, you have the right passion, the right direction, and that separates you from the rest immediately. I would love to talk for another 2 hours, but we don't have that much time. But I want to give each of you the chance to answer this last question, which is, we've covered so much. If there was one thing about these major challenges that we're facing as B2B executives, if there was one thing that you wanted to leave the audience with today as a takeaway, what would that be? And Efrat, I'll ask you to take the deck first there.
There is one thing, which is building the trust. Trust is such an important thing. It's so hard to build. It's so easy to ruin. And be close to your customer. Listen to them, not in a simple survey. Don't do it as a task box. Task checkbox, I listen to my customer and survey once a month. In my opinion, customer experience and customer executive is every executive job. It's not one job. While executive wants to put it in their calendar, you deal with the customer to make understand that to have a real empathy, what it means to be executive in your customer, to understand their customers. And that's the only way you can build trust, or a real understanding of your customer by being in their shoes and build the trust. See it as one of your most important things you're doing every day.
I love it. Lina, how about you?
I think it's just, for me, is listening. It's simple listening to your customers and taking action on what they're saying. Show them that you're listening. So listening not just for the heck of it, but listen. And once you take action on resting or whatever programs or the product or anything like that, it will all become very, very powerful and trusted if you're listening to your customers.
Well, I have to say, the mission of what we're trying to do here is to bring perspectives on the most important challenges and problems that we have as B2B companies and growing. And if we can all bring our different experiences and insights and perspectives together, that's the rising tide that lifts all boats. And I just want to say thank you, because the rising tide that you created today was incredible. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for being a part of this.